Okay, June Teenth is fast approaching, and this is one of the statues. I think there's three of them in Galveston. Three, actually dedicated to this moment, just in Galveston alone. Here, this is one of them, and I don't necessarily agree with this statue, but so we have Juneteenth, and this is emancipation. And it's a strange thing. Back then, of course, we didn't have the modern Caucasian incredible devices of the telephone and so on to really pass information quickly, like I'm doing right now. And it took about 2 years from the point that it happened to the point that Texas knew about it. And that was pretty much the extent at that point here. So they went with it, and that's it. And so this is a holiday, apparently, that black people praise white people for having done so much to domesticate them and bring them into a modern world that they had nothing really to do anything with. And so it's a day of happiness and rejoicing in the fact that the Caucasians freed them from Jewish slavery, which had gone on, but before that there was Islamic slavery that had gone on, but it had also happened to whites with the Barbary slave trade, and all through time too. It's nothing that's unique to them, but they want to somehow feel that it is towards everybody, and especially towards the whites. And but yet this is again the day of praising the whites for being so happy that they, I guess, were given the ability to stay in this big nation versus getting sent back. Because this picture right here is a moment in time, but Lincoln himself, just to be straightforward and truthful about it, had plans going in the works for black people to all go back. He actually openly said in his speeches that there was an incompatibility that would probably never work out, and wouldn't want to put that upon the American people as we were burgeoning in civilization and getting our shit going. So he did not agree with what happened, but they shot that man, so boom. But uh, Monroe, James Monroe, was in with a bunch of people, and they had actually annexed and gotten Liberia and tried to set it off, but only a few people went. And I don't know if you found out what happened to Liberia, but that's the type of thing that might happen. So then there's this big worry that that would go on too. So you'd wonder what Abe Lincoln would be saying to this man right now at it. I don't know if this is supposed to be some moment that happened where he walked up on a slave that was somehow not wearing clothing, chains freshly broked, and he says something to him here. But one would like to think that he would say, now you're not going to be doing any of this big crime or anything else, and you're going to try to be a part of civilization and do these things that you don't even know what I'm talking about, but you're going to just fit right in real quick and everything's going to go fancy. But no, what he's actually doing right here is probably in reality, if he was to come to life as a statue, would say, no, I'm sorry, waving his hand off and saying it's something that would never work out. You're going to have to go back to Africa, because that's what his beliefs were on the situation. So it looks at this big thing, and everybody tries to make a lot out of that moment too, but it was quite different. In fact, they feel like the whole Civil War was about it, or they want you to make you think it is somehow, but it really wasn't. It was about trying to unify the nation whenever it was trying to split apart, because all the farming was down in the South and all of the business part was up north, and it was trying to put it together and stuff, and it was causing a problem between them. And really, it got to the point that the North really owed the South for all their foods, and that became something that was a problem. And I don't know, these people always go with this, oh, the South will rise again and everything. The South rose again a long time ago. We feed the nation. We send off food to everywhere. We're way past the rose again. Well, no, that meant that they were going to rise again and take over. No, no, well, there's none of that shit. We weren't going to have that in the first place. This was unifying a great nation that was going to lead the world and all of humanity and become spacemen. We did all that. So something Abe would probably be saying here to him is that I'm sorry you can't stay. We don't want to end up being, having a burden upon us and all the BS that'll go along with it for after 150 years. We're trying to be spacemen. Something along that line probably. But this only happened 155 years ago, is it? So you think about it, it's really just two grandmas old age, right? Of course, ages overlap. So you'd say something like great great grandma. So it really wasn't that long ago that these people were recent primitives from sub-Sahara and didn't know Egypt existed or any things that they try to tell nowadays. But what we end up having, as opposed to the praise day I was starting out with, is what they're usually doing during this day is having a lot of barbecues. So eating Caucasian foods of Caucasian domesticated animals and other food products and drinks, alcohols and other things. And they're usually listening to music that's turned into a violent music that's usually all about hating their life and all the people that are trying to be the spacemen and the only reason that they are existing here in America. So it's kind of an odd thing to have it go on, but it goes and you can't stop it. I mean, when I was a kid, they would probably have been listening to Lionel Richie, and it'd have been a totally different situation. And we're in a totally different situation now, too. If we look at it, they're in a totally different situation than they were a couple hundred years ago. And, just to be straightforward, no racism or anything like that, just straightforward. I think a lot of the problem is that exact situation there. They were recent primitives that were pretty much illiterate whenever we ran into them there, and they were capturing and selling themselves. That lie of the white people ran around trying to catch black people with nets is silly. They were capturing and selling themselves off like some kind of drive-through slave mart. But and 900 years before the Americas were even found, so it's not like it was only these guys. So it went on for over 1,300 years, and actually really still goes on today. And they don't even really care about that. It's turned into a pity party victim thing here in America, so that's what they're about here, and living off of it, and it's become an industry for them really, and a way of life, sadly. And you can notice it sometimes. And if I was saying this 3 or 4 years ago, you would think that I was crazy and some kind of white racist naturalist shit, but saying it today, you realize that I'm just a person who's woke and seeing what's going on. And I just evaluate it from a third person's point of view. I just look at it and say, okay, well, one of these two people that's in this picture is a recent primitive, and the other one is of the people that herald civilization. Now, from this point, the standing up man there and his civilization and lineage still leads mankind and has taken us to where we are today, that the world mocks and loves, but also envies in some ways and is jealous of. But now they fly up through the skies into the heavens and even into space, seeing the face of God and coming back. Yeah. And doing it all the time. There are people in space right now on the space station, Zoom. It's incredible. And all of these things are really because of these people there that are standing up. Contrast that, and to be honest, the other people here would have be wearing new clothes now that are Caucasian clothes, shoes, socks, everything, all of that's Caucasian derived clothing and stuff. And they have been learning a lot from the Caucasians, trying to get going, in Zoom, but here we are 150 years later or more, and it seems like during my lifetime, that large step for mankind that we took when I was growing up with the moon and everything has taken a huge step back. And I've talked to my son about videos that I really want to go to space, and we should have done more. I thought we'd be just about the Jetsons by now, and wouldn't be too far from Star Trek. It'd be something within 100 years, 200 years that we could see. In fact, some of those Star Trek dates might be right, as opposed to Buck Rogers, and they thought that something was going to happen in 1984. Well, we're a little late, but look at what's going on in 1984. So I don't know if you like these statues being around, and if there needs three of them in a city. Mainly a lot of them in ports for some reason. But these white people that I hear that are in our lineage, a couple of steps back here, turned around and built a great nation that leads all of humanity. And in the process, there was these people, and they call it the Jewish slave trade for a reason. And 92% of them went to South America, not North America. But the group that went to North America was here for some, 1619 was an accident, and that's when the first one showed up, and they really liked that number. So they say 400 years, but I was talking to a guy that he was rambling and ranting and mad in 400 years, and it was like, you do realize over 150 years ago that everything was, we're not the same, and it's like, no one ever said you were the same. We said you would treat you the same. And he's like, all men are created equal. And I go, yeah, we wrote that. I understand very well that we wrote that. But when we wrote that, it didn't actually involve you. I'm sorry to mention that to you if you're not aware, but you were involved in that idea. The emancipation thing you were definitely involved in. And so we stopped slavery, but for all men whenever we did it too. So they couldn't have Irish slaves anymore, which there were 6 times as many Irish slaves that went to America as black slaves. And it was all indentured slaves, maximum of 7 years indentured servitude, and then you'd be freed. And quite often, due to your work and the effort you put into it, and it was hard. People died, all kinds. It was amazing. There was a children thing where there were like 70% of the children died. And now, whenever I did a video about this about 2 years ago, it was about the Irish and things. And what was a blowaway about that fact that I mentioned, and people finally let that set in, was they were talking about how that had gotten much better. And it makes you almost want to spontaneously vomit. Well, that's the Irish. But John Glenn, his great grandparents were one of those people that did make it. And John Glenn, Godspeed John Glenn, y'all know who he is, right? Yes, okay. Spaceman. So I think that's probably a lot of the problem is not other than rampant jealousy and somewhat of an inferiority complex that we have here going on. But one of these people did everything, and not just for them, but did it for everybody. But as far as what they have versus what Africa has now, well, Africa has now what the Caucasians had brought to it too. So what they can't stand, I'm guessing, is that everything for all time humanity is going to look like, well, after domestication and much da-da-da, the black people were, they were doing sports here pretty good, and look what happened, and oh man, they sure do act up and cause a bunch of crime and things like that. So, I mean, I don't know if you want that heritage, but that's all you're getting out of this. And it's a hard road that the Caucasians are put through here to have to go through it. And they don't get any respect whatsoever. In fact, if you look what's going on right now, it's quite the opposite. quite the opposite. And you'll find that to be strange because the only way they're still existing is because of the Caucasians propping him up. The deeper you look, the more it gets. And this is just straightforward. Hell, this thing will probably get banned or knocked or some stupid shit. And I don't know why. Free speech is free speech, but I'm just talking about this. For he's laying on a pedestal here that has Washington on the side of it and all of our sacred symbolism that we have going on. And I'm telling you now that Lincoln would have been telling him, I'm sorry. No, 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 no. We're not gonna go through this for 150 years. And whenever I say that, people, do you think that this is over today and everything's going to be just fine, and that 12% of the population won't be causing 60% of the major crime anymore, or just waiting for a hurricane or anything and looting and all that stuff to go on? Do you think all that's just going to go away and the IQs are going to bounce up like crazy? Do you? Because they said that was going to happen right after they set them free. There's been great advances. And any black person that does well, they get propped up pretty well. And the other ones that don't, boy, they get mad about it. And they say the other ones sell out and do everything. They even hate their own kind. It's terrible. We really don't want to go into that part about it. But they want to tear down statues and things that are of, oh, they don't even want to have schools named after Washington and Jefferson anymore. But they don't mind George Washington Carver, and he didn't make peanut butter. But they don't mind that. Whenever something like Washington or Jefferson is much more impressive and to humanity. Who cares if they owned slaves at the time? Everybody did. They led to a heritage that made that not happen anymore. Yeah, and trying to, what are you trying to do? Erase history? Because if you're trying to, this fact is going to be known for long, long after you're gone. It's not something you're going to be able to erase. Is that what they're trying to do? Because it's not going to be erased. If they wanted to erase it, really, they would go back to Africa and then take the Khoisan and the Bushmen and people that are still primitives that you can still see today, and up until real recently, before National Geographic stopped doing it, you can still see it. You can still see it today. Modern, it's still there in the non-westernized areas. But they would fix that. And then they would try to make that Wakanda thing. For they're not going to be able to do that in America because it's America. It's the spaceman's place that leads all of humanity. So no, sorry. It just doesn't work that way. And they don't want to be friends and partners in any way, shape, or form. In fact, they're just waiting for any chance to screw you over, and you can see it, and they say it right out. But if Caucasians were to even have this idea, they wouldn't be in here anymore. And people aren't realizing the moment that we're having here, but we're having almost this moment right here again, where we're going, tell you what, here's a chance. And they don't realize that there's this chance here. Other people see there's a chance. They get real jealous of them and they do good. You know, a weird statistic is you take somebody from Nigeria here and they always do much better than black people in America on an average, and you make you wonder why. And they say, well, it's systematic, da-da-da, and everything. And he was like, no, dude, that's on your own hands. Look at you. Given the opportunity, you chose to wear slacky jeans and listen to songs about how you hate the world and you hate white people. How's that supposed to work? How's that working for you? What do y'all think? How's that working? It doesn't seem to be working too good for any of us, does it? Now, I'm not calling for them to go back to Africa, but they had this back to Africa movement in last year but it got ignored extremely rapidly as it came out. And the people in Africa were making all these displays and stuff in the airports for them to come back. Somebody said that there was 1,100 of them that went. Somebody else refined that and said over 1,000 of them came back. Wow, so it was a visit for some. And they don't want to even try. They would rather do this victim thing and keep that going. And you know, it's amazing. There's a black politician from way back when who said there are certain people who like to live off being victimhood. I'm paraphrasing here. And they don't want to fix it because then they lose their job. And you start to think about people like Jesse Jackson and people like that that have tried to be that and develop their livelihood out of it. And it's sad you can get some black people that get a little extra snap going on, and what they do is they prey on their own people in the same sad victimhood rather than having their own prosperous life and trying to up the neighborhood or do anything else. Because that's what the Caucasians did to make all it happen, this type of unity, but they can't have a unity 2 blocks over in a Caucasian built neighborhood in a Caucasian world. And I think it's causing a lot of the problem. And eventually this conversation's probably got to come out. If anything is to be done, it has to start at the beginning, and we work through it and what might be the problems. And we can't ignore that what might be a major part of the problem is themselves, and that needs to be worked on. And is it left up to Abraham Superman here to fix everything, and they've got to throw billions at it? So what all have we done in 150 years for these people? Better question would be, what have they done worth talking about in recourse? There's probably some silence right here. I'd like to try to develop a list of what maybe, you know, I mean, it's strange, but we're going to get a list with things that they think that up there on the list with domesticating you into a spaceman's world. Across from it on the list is taught you how to moonwalk. Oh, no, wait, not on the moon itself, just the Michael Jackson thing. As he bleached himself and used cosmetic surgery to try to make himself look like Speed Racer, apparently. These black athletes aren't passing on their genes very much. It seems like there's quite a few of them that have gay kids. And you can blame that on all kinds of things, but you'll never blame it on yourself. And you'll never blame any of the crime that's even created by yourself on yourselves. And that's a lot of the problem here. And I'm trying to be serious, not some guy that's all, yeah, and serious. I mean, think about it. They're primitives, 2 grandparents out, wearing new clothes now, and we're just having extreme difficulty. Well, why? Well, it doesn't look like they were on the fast track to be spacemen anyhow. In fact, it looks like the other people here were held back and were able to easily do it once the freedom of America was here. I mean, industrial revolution, bing, 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 things fell into together. It's amazing where we could go. It's amazing where we could go if we all got together and people kept trying to front up and rooster around and said, you know, look, let's get behind this spaceman thing. It really could do well. They don't want to. There seems to be a jealousy. They don't want to be Worf. in the Star Trek thing. They want to be all of them. Well, I'm sad to say it, but that's the Klingons. And acting like a Ferengi. And that's not so acceptable to anybody watching the show. Ding. So let's try that again. So they were having their little BML events, BLM events, and taking a BM, and basically now I've ruined a good area and millions of dollars worth of stuff in at least 3 or 4 towns. But it looks like this lady, I don't know whose aunt she is, but this lady called Aunt Tifa, she's gotten a hold of it now and taken over really. And so what we've ended up here with is Seattle has a new country in the middle of it, and it was called GIMP. Yeah, that's what it is. It's an acronym, and it stands for GIMP. Yeah. They couldn't possibly sustain themselves. And what's funny is they've got this thing, and they even were pouring out no border walls. And right there, they put up this border that was the border of GIMP land. I don't know what they're going to change it to now. They were calling it Antifistan on one of the shows. But see, they've taken that over pretty much. But supposedly there's this rapper named Roz that's running the whole thing. And by the way, they have segregated gardens here, and he has an interrogation tent, and he's passed out weapons on camera to 15-year-olds. And what else? Yeah, you just wonder what's going to happen out of that. Supposedly some bikers are headed that way, that they're kind of interested in this new land, and that they might, I don't know what they might do. They might want that land for some reason. I don't know. Bikers, they're different kind of people, aren't they? So I don't know if you agree with these type statues where black people want to white guilt you and leave these statues active, but they want to pull down the ones that don't have the slave guy there. If it doesn't have a slave guy there, it's just not good. If it's anything about the building of America, that's not good. Well, here's a secret for you. All those Southern statues of Robert E. Lee and crap that they wanted to take down, those are actual white guilt statues right there in front of your face. Going, yeah, you remember when that tried to happen? Yeah, how'd that work out for you? And it's right there. And you have to drive by it every day, but they don't want that, and they tore it down. That seems anti what their currently deal is, doesn't it? They don't think some of these things through. They don't think any of them through. It's left up for somebody else to think them through things. And therein lies the problem again. So if we're going to have a conversation about this, we have to talk about how the problem stems from people not liking the abundance of crime and hatred directed towards them. With the opportunity given, this is what we get. And if it doesn't work out, you blame us. And we're just living our lives and didn't even know it was happening. What? Thank you very much. Oh, so that's Joon Teenth. So y'all all get ready, because this is probably going to be a totally different one. I predict this is going to be a week of virtue signaling, and instead of June 19th, it will be from the 12th. No, 12th is a 12. 13th. Oh, 10th, yes. 13th through the 19th. Probably it'll be the week of Umagerd that they don't have normally last year, or the year before, but they'll probably have it this year. Kind of like Kwanzaa, it'll just show up out of nowhere, right? Anyhow, guys, I'm not going to say like, share, and subscribe on this one. I'm just going to say think about that. It's only been 150 years. Yeah. Just a few generations away from primitives. Maybe that's a large portion of the problems on their end. Oh, and of course, if you say if they need to fix something on their end, they get real mad about it. But I think it's the only conversation that needs to start all of this. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments for however long this video stays up. Peace.